"This is horrible," Eddie complained, as his whole class avoided the puddles on Smith Avenue and headed toward the Bailey City Opera House. Eddie walked with his friends, Howie, Melody, and Liza. Liza shrugged. "It's not so bad. It's only raining a little bit." "Rain is only half the problem," Eddie said, pulling his baseball hat over his red hair. "Going to an opera is enough to ruin any day. Why does the third grade have to go to the opera every year?" "The teachers think it's good for us," Melody explained. "This year's opera might be kind of neat," Howie told his friends. Eddie frowned at Howie. "Going to a soccer game would be neat," Eddie said. "This is going to be boring." Howie pointed to the opera house. "The opera we're going to see is one of the most famous of all time." Melody smiled and shook rain out of her black pigtails. "It's just the kind of story you'd like. It's full of murder and mystery." "And beautiful singing," Liza added. She twirled her pink umbrella around and hummed a tune. "The part about murder sounds okay," Eddie admitted. "But why did they have to add singing? I've heard the singing is really weird, like this." Eddie jumped in front of his friends and yelled at the top of his voice, Liza shuddered. "If the opera singers sound like that, we're in big trouble." "If the opera singers sound like that, every dog for miles around will start howling," Melody said with a giggle. Eddie folded his arms over his chest and continued walking toward the opera house. Their teacher, Mrs. Jeepers, and the rest of their third-grade class were in front of them. Luckily, a girl named Carrie was busy telling Mrs. Jeepers about her big new house. Eddie was glad Mrs. Jeepers hadn't heard his crazy singing. Mrs. Jeepers didn't put up with any mischief from her students. Most kids believed the glowing green brooch she always wore had special magic that made kids like Eddie behave. Some of the third graders even thought Mrs. Jeepers was a vampire or some kind of monster. A monster that made them go to the opera. Since Mrs. Jeepers wasn't looking, Eddie jumped right in the middle of a big puddle. Liza, Melody, and Howie hopped out of the way just in time to avoid being splashed. Another kid named Huey wasn't so fast. He turned around and gave Eddie a dirty look before wiping mud off his raincoat. "I would rather take a spelling test than go to an opera," Eddie said sadly. Howie patted Eddie on the back. "It won't be as bad as you think." Eddie groaned. "It will probably be worse." But then Eddie saw something up ahead of him that made him change his mind.